Again, my name is Jack Findaro. I'm one of the co-founders of Visa Franchise. I am our product development director. And today we want to talk about how to work with E-2 Visa investors. This has been our focus the past few years, and especially uh, with the whole coronavirus situation ongoing. We've had a lot of franchisors ask about this and some new ones that are exploring their options as they work on continuing to develop their franchise during these uncertain times. So very happy to speak with you all today about E2 investors for your franchises. And then we can go through questions at the end. So here's the agenda. We'll talk about who Visa Franchise is, what are the advantages of working with E2 Visa franchisees, the requirements for the E2 Visa at a high level, what E2 investors look for in a franchise, as well as introducing our Vetted Biz platform, which is separate from Visa Franchise. So to start, it's who is Visa Franchise? So our company is headquartered in Miami Beach, Florida, with offices outside the US as well, in China, Mexico, and Turkey. Our focus is on identifying and analyzing businesses, particularly franchises that are eligible for the E2 visa. That's what the intention of most of our clients. We have advised clients from over 50 countries, and we speak a number of languages to better help our clients, assist them, even though the vast majority of our clients actually speak English fluently. And they've lived outside their countries. Maybe they work for a multinational company. Maybe they've even lived in the US or are currently living in the US. But we happen to speak a number of other languages. And then our leadership team has extensive background in the finance and the franchise space. Me in particular, I started my franchise industry experience at Burger King, which soon became Restaurant Brands International. And while there, I worked in the global finance department as well as the global development. I was there when Burger King acquired Tim Hortons and became Restaurant Brands International. And I eventually left to found Visa Franchise alongside my brother and business partner, Patrick Findaro. So here's our track record. We've helped over 330 clients to date. We started in 2015, almost 60 countries. We've looked at over 1,600 businesses, again, mostly franchises, as that's our focus. That's what the majority of our clients are interested in. They like the idea of a developed and replicable business model. Our approval rate's over 95%. So the vast majority of cases, they go right through, no issues, particularly when they do have a strong franchise that they're investing in. Very few businesses end up passing our due diligence process. We have extensive vetting process because we know what our clients look for, and we want to put them in the best position to succeed and have their business be success once they come in and invest and start operating the business. Now, our process is we take the personalized approach to each client in order to decrease the time it takes to make a decision. So our internal process, for those of you that aren't too aware, is that we have a very, very individualized approach, which is different than how most individuals or companies operate in the franchise consulting space, where we onboard a client, we ensure that they reach the threshold of type of criteria we want to see out of our clients, and they're typically high net worth individuals preparing to invest, make all cash equity investments of over $100,000. We then do a personalized approach based off of their profile, where they want to live, what types of industries they're interested in, what their background experience is, a whole range of factors to see which potential business opportunities are the best fit for them. And then we present them only with the 4 or 5 best franchise opportunities. So by the time our client ends up speaking with a franchisor, they're typically only choosing between 1 or maybe 2 other opportunities. So these guys are likely to close at a higher rate than a typical investor. And then we're with them throughout the whole process, working with them and the franchisor hand in hand until they make a final decision and their visa is approved. And each client has an individual from our team that's working very closely with them, that's supporting them throughout the whole process. So what are the advantages of working with E-2 visa investors? And we'll talk about that now. So why E-2 investors? It's for the benefits from a franchisor's perspective. They're all cash investors. They don't need any sort of financing, which is beneficial. They don't have to go through that extra step of trying to secure their lending program and making sure that they have the right credit score and all that. They're coming in with all equity, all cash. A lot of them, the vast majority are actually experienced entrepreneurs. They normally own or have owned businesses in their home country, and they're bringing that entrepreneurial experience to the U.S. They tend to be very highly motivated because by the success of the business, because their family visa is tied to the business being successful. Most of the investors want to move quite quickly. They definitely, I'd say that for us, the majority of our investors want to move within the next 6 months. That's their goal. If they could move sooner, they would move sooner. But obviously, it takes some time for them to go through the whole process of deciding what to invest in, going through the franchisor's approval process, and then eventually applying for their visa. The whole applying for the visa part typically only takes 2 to 8 weeks until they can get an interview. With COVID, it's taking a little longer due to the consulates, depending on the country, being shut down for a time period, particularly in March and April and May, and now they're working through a lot of visas they're processing. They normally invest all in $100,000 to $300,000 as well. I'd say that's the typical range for an E-2 investor that we see. Now, what are the requirements for the E-2? The E-2 investor must demonstrate the following. So they need to have a citizenship from a treaty country. So if it's a husband and wife, at least one of them needs to have the citizenship from a treaty country. And a treaty country is one of 80 countries that the U.S. has a certain trade agreement with. And then whether it's a husband or the wife, it's a husband-wife combo, whichever one has a treaty country citizenship will apply. Or if they both have it, then they'll choose whichever one is going to be working in the business. The applicant needs to have invested or is actively in the process of investing when they apply for the E-2. The enterprise needs to be real and operating commercial enterprise and is not marginal. So what does this mean? Simply, it means that the business needs to be something that when they go in to apply, that's consulate can understand. That's why we really like franchises. That's why our clients like franchises. They can see, okay, this is something that is tangible, has a track record, and we know it's real. By not marginal, it means that the business has enough profit to support the individual and their family while they're in the U.S. And so they typically want to just ensure that the investor will be making money and be able to support themselves while they are in the U.S. and operating this business. There's no set amount, they say, for that. Number 4, the applicant's investment is substantial. This too, there's no set amount, but we have seen in general that $100,000 or more is better. And the higher the investment, the better it is. For the client, the easier it is for their application, because then when they apply for the visa, they can really prove to their consulate officer that, hey, this is actually something that is not just a marginal business. It's going to be able to even allow me to hire some workers and create jobs here in the U.S. And the applicant needs to be in a position to develop and direct the enterprise. And what this means is that the applicant should have 51% or more of the business, and they need to have the ability to direct and operate the business, which is their way of proving why they need this visa and to be here. So important, I wanted to add a note. So those are the E-2 visa requirements. And what does this mean for the franchisor? As it pertains to the franchisor, not a whole lot changes compared to an individual that's a foreign national that's going for the E-2 versus a typical franchisee that they work with that's might be American or a green card holder already in the U.S. The franchisors, we always strongly suggest, just maintain your same vetting process that they use for any other franchisee. Because at the end of the day, typically franchise agreements 10 years, maybe 20 years. You want to make sure that the person will meet the standards that you look for in a typical franchisee, and so that they're in the best position to succeed and to help grow your franchise system. So what do E-2 investors look for in a franchise? No matter what sort of industry the investor looks for or where they're going to have the business, they want a good investment. That's the reason why they typically contract our services, a visa franchise. I would say that's like the main focus. They want a business, obviously, that's not going to fail. That will enable them to get a return once they do invest. So you look for a rate of success. What's their track record? How has the brand done in the past? Are they growing, or are they closing? Does the franchise actually have a brand? Is it valuable enough for them to invest in it, sign a franchise agreement, and decide to grow the business that way, as opposed to going in an independent route and starting their own sort of business? So it's important to have a strong brand, a good story at the very least, and then operational support. So they look for franchisors that can help them grow, that have basically a roadmap that they help any of their franchisees with, whether it goes from the development cycle to training, and then once the business opens up, the operational support and the marketing. I will note here too, what we have seen is that our clients do like the idea of franchise resales. They can actually be a pretty good option depending on the franchise and depending on the investor. Some of our clients actually prefer that. So that's another opportunity to even help if you want someone to come in and there are resale opportunities. That could be another option for someone to potentially invest in your franchise and get their E-2 visa that way. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a new entity, a brand new franchise unit. So what are our goals during all this? So our goals are to find the best franchise investment opportunities that will qualify them for the E-2. Obviously, we look for all these factors to ensure that risk-reducing factors is what we call them, to ensure that when they do invest, that it is successful, and they don't have a business that then fails soon after they invest, and then they have to do another big investment. It can get quite expensive. So that's what we look for. That's what our clients look for. We do our best to simplify the process, show them the best opportunities that fit their profile and that of their family. Everyone's different, and we work with our clients throughout the whole process. We don't believe in just showing a few options or a list of options and then letting the client, try and figure it out on their own. What we do is we actually work very closely with our client and the franchisor in order to really increase the chance of the investor moving through and making their franchise decision. So that's on the E-2 front. And if anyone has any questions, we can go over that. I know that in this time with the whole coronavirus still ongoing, it could be another avenue for continuing to develop your franchise, as we still have clients from all over the world that are continuing to move forward, even during this whole time. They're continuing to move to the US, or they're even already in the US, and they might even have changes to their immigration status that leads them to decide that doing an investment for their E2 is their best option. So I also want to introduce our platform, Vetted Biz. This is a little separate. This is a very brief introduction. This is a platform we've been working on this past year, and it's different than Visa Franchise. But what it does is it's building off of our experience at Visa Franchise, where this is much more of a platform model, and it's the focus is on educating the broader market, including the Americans. That's actually a big focus for us, people that are already in the US that want to find out what franchise to invest in, and this can be a lead generator for franchisors that sign up. We show a lot of franchisor-specific information that we go through, as well as industry, in order to really educate users before they decide to reach out to a franchisor directly without us being in the middle. We're very exclusive with which franchisors we permit on the system. You see a lot of these platforms where they're full of businesses that are not franchisors, and they just enable them to stay on their system because they happen to be paying them a lot of money, whether it's for healthy vending machines or some sort of training program. This is a platform that's just for franchisors. We want to go with quality over quantity. That's our focus, and stick to franchisors, and particularly franchisors that are doing things the right way. So if you want to learn more, you can go to vettedbizcom. We have a lot of information there, FAQ, and we'd be happy to talk about that. I just wanted to briefly introduce that. And then here's our contact information. So I'll see if there's any questions. Again, today is really a brief discussion on E-2 visas and what's possible during this time. And again, we've had a lot of people asking about it to see what's happening and see if it's a potential option for their franchise development growth plans. So I'll allow a moment for questions in case anyone has any. So here's a good question. What happens if they don't get the E-2 approved? So that is possible. It's actually very rare. The overall approval rate for E-2, the E-2 visa for the government's website, is over 90%. So if an individual does not get their E-2 approved, the vast majority of the time, whether it's that small percentage of individuals, is they would have a chance to go back to the consulate and reapply. So if they don't have it approved, typically it's because they tried to apply for the visa before they had invested a substantial amount of money and actually committed those funds irrevocably, as well as maybe they don't have a lease signed. That's another thing that we see that the consulates do want to see, because basically the consulates want to see that the person has invested and that they have invested a substantial amount of money. In a worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, so in a bad scenario, the person would just reapply. From all the cases when our clients have reapplied, they've gotten approved. It's because their immigration attorney saw, hey, this is the feedback from the consulate. Let's fix this, and then they reapply. In the worst case scenario, the person doesn't reapply. Potentially, they have to do a franchise resale. In an absolute worst case scenario, but it's quite uncommon from our experience. How long does the E-2 visa last? So the E-2 visa, is up to 5 years. So depending on what country the individual is from, their visa will last 5 years. And then at that 5-year renewal period, they would then just reapply at the consulate and say, hey, this is my business. This is what I've done. Here's maybe they have a tax record, or they show their P&L and show that they're still in business. And that's really what the government will wants to see. And they've also have employed some individuals outside of themselves. So a pretty simple process. Question from Mark, what type of businesses would be available between the range of, I think this is for 100,000 to 150,000 and would qualify for an E-2 visa. These are typically have to do with service-based businesses. We've seen in the tax space, the tax preparation services, insurance industry. We've seen commercial cleaning. We've seen some childhood education concepts. There's a number of low-cost opportunities that can fit. Some in the food space as well, as there are some concepts that have moved more towards a very delivery-centric focus, or it's just takeout orders and that's it. And so it really decreases the investment amount. Those are examples of some industries. Another question I had is Brazil an E2 country? You get a lot of people interested from there. So as a background, our company actually started off focusing on Brazilian clients almost exclusively. So we always had clients from a few other places, but when we started back in 2015, we had just Brazilian clients. Our first client was Brazilian. So we had a lot of Brazilian clients, and we still do, but now we've really diversified. And the question about whether it's an E2 country, Brazil is actually not an E2 country. But what the way that a Brazilian will apply is typically they or their spouse holds another passport or another citizenship, and they have the passport for that country that is an E2 country. So for instance, I would say the majority, probably 80% of our Brazilian clients have Italian citizenship. That's been really common. We've had Argentine Brazilians, we've had Japanese Brazilians, we've had Spanish Brazilians, and a few others. But I would say those are the main countries, and that's typically how they do it. Where do clients mostly want to live? That's a good question. So our clients are actually, they're living all over the US. I would say the majority though, and it shouldn't come as a big surprise, but the majority want to do an investment that is in either Florida, California, or Texas, which are, three of the biggest states. A lot of people, they like those three states. They like the business environments, particularly in Texas and Florida. They like the weather. And they're states that are really growing. So I would say those states are the biggest. And even for, Americans, you have a ton of Americans moving down to migrating domestically, moving into Florida and Texas. So that's where a lot of our clients are choosing to invest, but we do have clients also moving outside of those areas to typically more bigger cities, whether it's DC, Chicago. Those are a few examples. Atlanta. All right. Another question, what are your fees that you charge for your set of services? So for Visa franchise, it really depends. It depends on a range of factors. We look at how much the client wants to invest, where they want to live, the type of franchise they want to do. So for us, our retainers in the range of $2,000 to $5,000. That's what we charge our client to become. How we charge an individual to become a client of ours, and then we act as a franchise consultant when they do eventually invest. So another question about specific places. Separate question. Okay. Someone's asking about, they're not from, this is more of an immigration question. They live in Peru and not a treaty country. They're Argentine and Italian. We've seen clients that have gone to an interview that is outside, or they've gone to a E-2 interview at a consulate within a country that's not an E-2 country. We've actually seen that. That's quite common. But for your case in particular, in Peru, what we always recommend to do is you want to ask an immigration attorney. They're going to be your best resource. They know which consulates are open to doing that. Not all consulates are comfortable doing E-2s, especially if it's not an E-2 country. Sometimes they'll direct individuals that want to do an E-2 interview to another country outside of the one that they currently live. So that's something you want to ask an immigration attorney. And we, by the way, recommend all of our clients to have an immigration attorney. So another question about which states in the U.S. have the lowest tax structure. You can look that up online. It depends on what you're talking about, whether it's income tax or state taxes, sales taxes. In general, Florida and Texas are designated as two of the higher ranked places for people to do business. I believe they're both in the top 10, maybe even the top 5. But yeah, you can see that online. And there's a load of information if you Google that. So how long, another question is, it's regarding the process for the E-2 visa. How long does it take to get once they apply? That process, what we had seen historically is 2 to 8 weeks. Now there's a little more delay as of right now, just because of the situation we're in with coronavirus. The consulates are still enabling people to sign up and schedule interviews. But those, in the prior months, those interviews were delayed because the consulates are closed. So what's happening now is that consulates they're basically working through the backlog. So it's going to take a little longer. That question I can't answer exactly because it also depends on what country the consulate's located and where you apply, due to the fact that some countries are much more open right now because they have way less cases of coronavirus, where others are still they're still having a lot more cases, and so the consulates are much more careful about having a lot of people come in. So it really depends on the country that you apply. Again, that's a very good immigration attorney question, and we do recommend all of our clients, and for franchisors that don't even work with a Visa franchise client that's just working with a E-2 investor directly, you do definitely want them to have an immigration attorney because this is a specialized area of law. The same way that you have franchise attorneys. I mean, immigration can be very complicated, and in order to get the best results, you definitely want to have a good immigration attorney. A question is, all the franchises on vettedbizcom should be approved for the E-2. Not necessarily. I mean, the vast majority of franchises, 99% of franchises, maybe not 99%, but over 90% of franchises you can assume would be able to get into visa. Again, from our experience, typically if the investment is $100,000 or more, you can get an E-2 visa. So it's $100,000 or more. You create 1 or 2 extra jobs besides the owner. And then you have a lease, and with that, in terms of how the business works, typically that's what you need. So the vast majority of franchises fit that criterion. So with that, it looks like we don't have any other questions. I wanted to invite anyone who has additional questions. Feel free to, whether it's about Visa franchise or about Vetted Biz, feel free to speak with us anytime. We're always available. Happy to schedule a call. It could be via Zoom if you would like, if you want to do a video, or more than happy to just do a standard phone call. We have a lot of information on our websites, Visa Franchise and Vetted Biz, and we're more than happy to speak soon. And with that, I want to wish you all to stay safe and healthy during this difficult time, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for joining. Take care.